Well, folks, now that we've gotten through the job description, we set our sights on creating good quality questions to help us get through our interviews. And to start this video off, I want to remind you of something that should be real obvious, but sometimes as interviewers, we tend to lose sight of it. The whole point of an interview is to find out who can do this job the best so that we hire somebody who can step in and start being productive quickly and who will get along with their coworkers. So my approach to designing a question set for an interview is really focused on two things. Number one, it helps me decide if you can, as a candidate, do each one of these essential functions. And number two, it helps me to determine whether you, as a candidate, will be able to get along with your coworkers. So if you think back to your last interview that you went on, and maybe that you did, there's probably a good chance that there were several questions that are from the Google questions for interviews kind of approach, like tell me about your three greatest strengths and your greatest weakness, and things like that. And I think if our sole purpose is to hire the best candidate, that kind of a question doesn't tell me whether you're better than somebody else, unless it's put into the context of the essential functions of the job. So I'm going to share a screen with you here for a second and give you access to see a document that's on the content page for week 6. And I'd like for you to go about designing your questions using this template and using this philosophy. Now, in the real world, you may do it completely different. You may have done thousands of interviews and done them differently than this. But for the purpose of this assignment, I want you to focus on my concept of an interview. And that again being, I'm really mostly concerned, almost 100% concerned with whether you can do these essential functions, whether you have these KSAOs, and whether you're going to get along with your coworkers. Beyond that, the questions I might ask you are just icebreaker, get to know you, make you at ease, or miscellaneous. And there should be very few of those. And the second thing that I want to tell you as I get you thinking about these questions that you're about to design is that there's no magic number. But I want you to try your best to design an interview that lasts 30 or 40 minutes. I've asked you to block off an hour just in case you get into a good conversation with somebody and it runs a little bit late. But I would argue that if you have a 12 to 15, maybe 20-minute interview with me as a candidate, I would say that you haven't gotten to know me well enough to know whether I can do this job or not. And it's just kind of a check off the box. We did the interview because we really wanted to hire somebody else, and I didn't get a real chance to prove myself. So I'm going to tell you that my philosophy of interviewing, as I teach and as I occasionally conduct interviews, is that the longer I can spend with you, the better I can clarify in my head whether you can do these essential functions, whether you have these KSAOs, and whether you're going to fit in with my team. And if I cut you short on an interview, I'm not doing you any favors, and there's a chance that I'm not going to hire the best candidate because I didn't take the time to find that out. So as we go to this template, I want you to think about questions you can ask that aren't short answer. Basically, can you work the hours that are listed here? Is yes or no? Do you consider yourself to be a team player? Is yes or no? I want you to focus more on behavioral questions and situational questions, which allow you to tell me a story. In fact, a lot of times I actually phrase it that way. If I'm looking to find out if you can be a team player, I'll say, tell me about a time when you had to be a part of a team working towards a goal and how that worked out for you. And that gives them the opportunity to spend a couple of minutes talking about this situation. They may need to kind of think for 20 seconds before they answer, and we got to be patient with that. But the more I can get you to tell me stories, the more I can make good educated guesses as to whether you can, here I go again, do these essential functions or have these KSAOs, or will get along with your coworkers. And if there's nothing else that I do in the context of this assignment to develop interview questions, I'd like it for what I do get you to think about to be two things. Number one, design questions that allow them to talk, to extend your interview and learn more. And number two, keep your questions focused on the job itself and not some of the other things that are popular fill-ins. So let me enough talking for now. This time I think I'm going to share camera and screen so that you can still look at my ugly face as you're looking at this. If I go to view here and say 100% page width, that's a little bit closer. All right, it's fairly likely that you're going to want to do something at the start of the interview just to get them at ease. So I would say that we could potentially allow several icebreaker questions as long as they don't get personal, as long as they don't open the door to discrimination charges. But there's a real point behind these particular questions that we ask everybody. If you looked at the INT1 video that I did, I kind of laid out how you might get an hour interview out of this interaction with these people. And the first part of it was make them feel at ease, make them feel comfortable. So an icebreaker question or two might be appropriate as a way to start off, to let them get a couple of correct answers out of the way real quick to ease them a little bit. But after you get through those icebreaker questions, and if you don't do them, I think that's fine, but maybe you have a couple of things, then you move into your job description. And what I'll encourage you to do is, as you're filling out going through this process to create interview questions, I'm going to challenge you to get your job description and read your first essential function, and then think, how can I ask a question that will tell me, or at least give me a good insight into whether or not this candidate can do that specific function. So if your first function is to get the mail and sort it for delivery to people around the building, how can I ask a question that will help me decide if you actually ever have gotten the mail and sorted it to deliver to people around the building, or if you haven't ever done that before, how you might see yourself doing that in the future. And sometimes it's really tough to come up with especially a behavioral question about one of your essential functions. But I'm going to again challenge you. I've put 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I've put 9 bullets on here in case you have a bunch of essential functions. If you've only got 6 essential functions, you can eliminate a couple of these bullets. But again, I'd like for you to try to come up with a question that addresses each one of your essential functions. Again, if your goal is to see who can do those functions and you don't ask them questions about those functions, you're not accomplishing your goal. So start off with those essential functions. In that example about getting the mail, tell me, I'm kind of struggling even to come up with an example for that. But if this happens to be somebody who's kind of head of household, you might say, tell me about a time at home when there was a lot of mail in the mailbox and you had to kind of sort through and figure out what was important or not and how to give it to the appropriate people. That may not be a very good question at all, but that's the kind of thing I'm looking for. So for every single one of your bullets, a big part of the grading is going to be whether I feel like the questions you ask are going to help you determine if this candidate can do these functions or not. Because again, if you don't get to the heart of the functions, your interview hasn't really helped you a lot to determine who is the best person. So each one of the essential functions. Then I'll get you to take your job description and flip it to page 2 and look at the KSAOs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 on the first page, 8, 9. If you've got more than 9 KSAOs, maybe you pick out maybe the 9 most important ones or the 9 easiest ones to get to. If you've got less than 9 KSAOs, just eliminate a couple of blanks. But the same thing, I want to encourage you, I want to challenge you. If it's important to you that they have these knowledge, skills, abilities, and other characteristics, ask them a question to see if they've got it, to see if they can put it into words, to see if they can illustrate that they have that knowledge or that skill. So look at the first statement in your KSAOs and think to yourself, how do I ask a question that helps me to measure what degree of this they have, or at the very least to determine, to confirm that they do have this skill. So for every one of your KSAOs, I'd say find a way to ask a question about that particular bullet on your job description. And again, part of the grading is whether you have got questions that help you determine if these candidates have these KSAOs, and maybe even which one of your candidates displays this KSAO more than the others. That may not be the way that you have always interviewed, but I think this is a little more challenging way to develop an interview question set, but I think it's a more effective interview question set. Again, this is going to be about the 6th time in this video, but I cannot stress it enough. If your interview does not determine which of your 4 candidates can better do the essential functions, and which of your candidates better has appropriate quantities of KSAOs, then your interview has not really helped you determine which one of these people to pursue further. All right, going through this, I go along. It's also important to make sure that there is a good person-job fit, so maybe you'll have a question or two, maybe not, about how the person feels about this job, or to what degree somebody has done a similar job in the past. Person department fit is going to be how folks get along with people they work with. So maybe there's a couple of questions. I've built it into the template, and you might not use it. I'd say of the whole template, you really need to have something in this, a bunch of somethings in the essential functions block, in the KSAOs blocks, and you might use the rest of these, and you might not use the rest of these. But related to the person department fit, try to gauge how well they're going to be able to get along with the personalities in the department if you hire them, because again, they may be able to do the job really well, but if they've got some personality quirk that they're not going to be able to get along with people, then that might be a red flag that you don't want to pursue them any further. Then person organization fit, maybe some questions that deal with their values and if they line up with our corporate culture and things like that. Again, you might come up with a great question or two, and you may draw completely a blank. It may not be any importance to you to come up with a good sense of how they'll fit with our organization as a whole. And then to fill out the sheet, there's 6 spaces for some miscellaneous questions. Man, if you're just dyed-in-the-wool, tried and true, tell me about your greatest weakness, and you believe that that can really help you make a decision between your 4 candidates, then I'd throw it in there towards the end. This is a tool that I just developed in the last couple of days. I've never used it before with another class, and I don't know how well it's going to work, but I hope that it will focus you on things that are important. As we're going to talk in a different video about our hiring matrix, you've got to decide what's important, and I would hope that their answer to that first question about that first essential function makes a difference, and you're going to want to be able to score that. So if this, in conjunction with your thoughts about what's important about to consider about hiring somebody, were they on time, were they professionally dressed, did they answer question 4 well, was their resume clean and free of errors, whatever like that, you might try to address some of those things on this particular sheet. That's probably enough for now, about 13 minutes. But I would like to summarize by saying some of your classmates aren't going to watch this video. The fact that you are hearing me make that statement indicates that you did. But I'd really like to see you try to use this document. Maybe if you can find some real value in that. If you interview a lot of people, you could use something like this in your real work experience as you get ready to interview somebody for a particular job. Pull the job description and write down questions about each of those essential functions and each of those KSAOs, and then use this as a guide for your interviewing. Maybe it will help you to actually copy and paste from your document for your job description document into here. Highlight the first essential function and paste it onto the first line here, and then type a question in underneath that. You may need more space for the questions. Behavioral questions probably take a little bit more wording to get the point across. But I hope you'll use this document. I hope that you'll find that it is reasonably effective in helping you do what you want to do. You can feel free, once you download this thing and save it to your computer, to get rid of any categories you don't need, to add in additional lines if you find that you're taking more space than I've allowed. But hopefully this will really get you focused on the questions that will make your interviews be more effective and be a little bit longer, and help you to get those candidates to open up and tell you what you need to know. All right, that's going to be it for now. I'll do another video here shortly about your hiring matrix, which you'll be working on kind of in conjunction, but really on the tail end of your questions to help you get what I'm looking for as we go into this process. Thank you for listening, and wish we could have had this conversation in a classroom.